Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Talk Show. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM, and I am here at Nova Properties, and I'm going to be talking to Neal Verma, who is the CEO of Nova Asset Management. And this is being live video streamed to YouTube. And while we are talking about YouTube, we would like you to download our app for Android and Apple devices so you can follow us around the clock. Talking about YouTube, we got more than 750 videos accenting the days of our lives here in Houston. And please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is NIK NIKAM. That is NIK NIKAM. This is also being live video streamed to Google Plus, and you can follow us there also. And we also have a Facebook page called NIK NIKAM Network, where we keep you abreast of the latest buzz in the Houston area and from around the world. So we would like you to please do like our Facebook page, and let us get down to our topic today, which is apartment and office commercial real estate market. And with the recent increase in interest rate, let's see, we can hear from our expert, as to how it's going to have an effect, along with oil prices, stock markets, and of course, he has come up with some innovative ways to minimize loss in property management. He's got some excellent tips on property management. Neal, welcome to Triple N Talk Show. We are delighted to have you. Let's start off with a little bit about your background.
Sure. I have been in the real estate business for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
I also have some technology background.
Yeah.
I had started some different technology companies in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I also have a search engine patent that I had written and gotten approved back in 2011.
Yeah.
And but my primary focus is real estate. And so I've been in the apartment business and office building business for some time now.
Yeah. I know, along with your dad, Arun Verma, I guess you both must have 50 years of cumulative experience in dealing with apartment and office real estate.
Yes. Yeah. He was doing it for a long time. And then when we came to United States back in '91, he had started it here in the United States as well.
I see. Yeah.
And then I came on board around 97, 98.
So you are now the CEO of Nova Asset Management. Is that the one that manages all the apartments and the office complexes and all this?
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe you can introduce us to the concept of office and apartment real estate in the Houston area from your perspective.
Sure. So right now there is a lot of so now in 2015 there's a lot of new construction coming around in Houston. There's a lot of new apartment complexes popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
So if you look around any of the freeways here in Houston around I-10, 610, and 59, you'll see a lot of new construction. New construction in the apartment business is called A class.
I see.
So there's so apartments are actually graded A through F basically.
I see. Yeah.
And so A class is basically your new properties. B class is your older properties, about 10 to 20 years old. C class is your older property, 30, 40 years old. D class is essentially like your boarded up proproperties. There's actually no E class property, but there's an F class, which is a failing class. Basically it's completely failed. And usually destroyed. And so kind of, so that's how apartments are graded. And so all of the new A-class properties in Houston are popping up. So there's a lot of new units that have come up. And the reason for that is that, of course, the oil and gas was helping pump up the Houston economy quite a bit. And so there was a lot of new jobs being generated in Houston. So a lot of people were moving from all over the U.S. to Houston because of the refineries, because of the fracking companies, because of the oil and gas companies here in Houston. There's a lot of energy companies here. And so there's a lot of, or there was a lot of demand for housing in Houston. And so a lot of developers saw a large opportunity to create new apartment complexes, especially when there hasn't been a lot of new properties that have been built from 2000 and basically from 2008 till about 2013.
Oh, really?
There
That's
weren't
since the market crash.
Since the market
we didn't
crash.
have anything in Houston.
Basically, all construction stopped from 2008.
But surprisingly, I live in
2013.
Sugarland. In Sugarland, the construction has been going on throughout the 2 periods of market crash.
Right. There was some additional, yes. In Sugarland, there was definitely more construction than in Houston because it's a little bit separate, different market. And then, but even then in Sugarland, there's not that many apartment complexes. Actually, Fort Bend doesn't allow for a lot of new additional, what we call multifamily or apartment. So it's mainly commercial office space. And so that's been going up in Sugarland for a different reason. But in Houston, most of the new properties that have been coming up are apartments and office space. There's a lot of new office buildings in Houston. And the reason again for that is because of the oil and gas companies. You have a lot of oil and gas companies that were expanding, a lot of oil and gas companies that want to relocate and have their own building. So a lot of these guys were getting very excited. So a lot of new construction, especially along I-10. It's like, especially in the last couple of years, if anybody driving along I-10, they would have seen Houston looking like Dubai with like
all these high-rise,
office buildings all over the place and cranes everywhere. And so a lot of those buildings, though, are in the final stages of construction. A lot of the new building permits that have been pulled for for a lot of these office buildings have been kind of put on hold, a lot of the new construction, because a lot of the new buildings that have been built, the oil and gas companies, a lot of them haven't even relocated to those buildings. In fact, a lot of these oil and gas companies in Houston have shrunk. They've reduced their workforces by 25%, 20% in the larger companies. Some of these fracking companies have lost 50% of their employees. And so, of course, a lot of these buildings now are suffering. So no developers want to build new buildings right now. And so it's going to be interesting what happens in the commercial office building space in the next 3 to 5 years, because you have a lot of new buildings, A-class buildings, right? A-class being the new buildings, new construction, that are going to be, in my estimation, sitting empty for a while.
Like I remember in the 80s when the market crashed and all this, the whole downtown office occupancy was like 50%.
Yes, and that happened again.
That's when,
that actually
the
happened.
Enron building and all this were all.
Exactly. Again, even in Houston, between 2008 and 2011, that was the same situation in downtown here in Houston. It was about 50% in most of the office buildings. And so one could get an office building for like half the price of what somebody paid back in 2007. Literally. And so so a lot of these buildings now, it's going to be interesting what happens in a couple of years, because a lot of these guys are going to be doing some real sweetheart deals in the next couple of years to get all these new spaces filled up. And they're going to be pulling from either other A-class buildings that are older or from B-class buildings, and giving, pricing essentially the same as a B-class building to entice those people to move into those A-class buildings, which of course anybody will. Why would you want an older building when you get a newer building?
I guess they're trying to unload their obligation.
Right. And they want to make sure they can pay their mortgage and stay afloat and not go into foreclosure. So then you're going to have a lot of B-class space available. And maybe some of these A-class guys, they may also foreclose. So I think there's going to be a lot of commercial office space coming up in Houston in the near future.
That's fascinating. It's very interesting because just last week I had a talk on boom and bust in oil prices and supplies, man-made or real. We had an expert on our panel. He's Fonny Gaddy. He's the one who projects oil supplies and oil demands and all these things. We went through an entire chart as to why oil prices went up and all these things. So it very much fits with your real estate boom and bust, which is going with the oil prices.
Of course,
and of course, you're going to be talking about that. And the most fascinating thing is that the oil prices were like $140 just about 18 months ago. Now they're like $35, $38, and nobody knows how long this is going to last. In fact, I was reading an article this morning. They said most of the Arab countries have 3 to 5 years of cash reserve to sustain this kind of price. After that, they're all going to go bankrupt.
Correct. Exactly.
So maybe you can explain more about how oil prices tie with the real estate market.
Yeah, so in Houston, especially, the oil and gas market drives a lot of the Houston real estate
economy. Also.
Economy, yeah. Houston is basically has 3 tiers. It's oil and gas, medical, with the largest
medical center,
medical center in the United States,
and
aerospace. So these are kind of like the 3 legs of Houston.
I see,
And so, but oil and gas is probably the biggest leg. And so, if Houston suffers from oil and gas, definitely there is a little suffering in Houston. It's not going to be as bad as what happened in the 80s, because that was just a one-leg economy back then. But definitely Houston is suffering now to some small degree. It'll get worse as time goes on. And the reason for that is, again, because of the oil prices coming down. What happens is, and we're seeing it already in the apartment business, is that the oil and gas pricing has affected the middle management in oil and gas companies, because that's kind of like the first layer to take out. And then also the people, another layer of people to let go are the IT folks in a lot of oil and gas companies, because a lot of them, they'll have a lot of IT folks, like in
first
thousands.
The construction and labor force, and then the IT.
And then construction. So the IT guys, they've already been, they were started to, we started seeing them being let go by oil and gas companies about 8 months ago.
I see,
And it got more and more. So like a lot of these IT companies were, especially that are contractors to oil and gas companies, they were cutting down their workforces by like 50%. And so it was affecting us, because a lot of the IT folks are living in B-class properties.
B-class properties,
And so a lot of them have been let go. So we've lost a lot of tenants that used to live in those apartments. And so on average, in a B-class property, you might have about 300 units. And on average, you'll have around 12 to 16 people move out in any given month on an average 300-unit property for whatever reason.
Pretty fast attrition.
Job and I mean, that's just a normal apartment attrition. No, that's normal apartment attrition.
I see.
Is about that. It's about 3%, you can say. And for whatever reason, they change jobs or change schools or move or change whatever it is. That's normal. Then I'm seeing another 7 to 10 on top of the normal number of move-outs, and I believe that additional 7 to 10 move-outs per month at the B-class properties is due to, in large part, to the oil and gas companies, because a lot of those people comprise of IT workers, and then other people related to oil and gas. And then the other thing that's happening is in the C-class properties and the older properties. What's happening is we have a lot of construction workers living in those properties who are working on the multifamily building, new apartment buildings, the new office buildings. And a lot of those constructions have stopped now. They've finished those. They're not starting any new ones.
That's right.
And so now we're starting to see them let go. That, by the way, just happened in the last month or so.
So are we at the beginning of a real estate crunch, or are we in the middle, or are we seeing the sunlight?
No, we are definitely at the. We are at the beginning of it.
That's what I think, because
we're at the beginning.
Let's talk about the stock market. All the stock market giants were financing all these oil companies, and that's how all the revenue was trickling down to the employees and construction and all this. And how is that going to affect? And how will these companies will be able to even meet their financial obligations?
So that's the problem, I think, is that a lot of the banks, especially in Texas, and a lot of smaller banks and community banks, are going to have a problem, because a lot of these banks have given loans to a lot of these fracking companies, for example. And these guys had large projections, when they did their business plans, that they obviously predicted oil to be above 100. So that they could make some good money on fracking, and so they didn't anticipate that Saudi Arabia would basically try to cut off their legs. And
we don't know who's cutting off whose legs, but nonetheless, the oil prices are $40 a barrel. I mean, it's hard to say, as who is trying to hold the breath as long as they can.
I don't know. It's I mean, it's definitely I think it's Saudi Arabia to a large extent, and OPEC, but mainly Saudi Arabia, I think, is driving that ship. And so how long they can hold their breath, who knows? But they want to try to squeeze everybody out. And so by doing that and getting the oil price down to 35, or it might even go lower. I think Goldman Sachs had predicted it going to 30 just about 5-6 months ago, and nobody believed them at that time. Let's see what happens. But definitely, what's going to happen with the a lot of fracking companies, and I've talked to some of these guys in the fracking companies. They're telling me they're only having 6 months, 8 months in cash reserves left.
That's right. In fact, we talked about fracking in the previous video. For those of you who are watching this show, you can go back to our YouTube channel, which is NIK NIKAM, and watch a presentation we have on boom and bust in oil prices and supplies, man-made or real. And our special guest in that one is Fonny Gaddy. So you get a whole perspective of oil, its influence, and now we are talking about its influence on the real estate market here in the Houston area. Okay, Neal, you can give out your contact information and phone numbers so that if somebody wants to get in touch with you for more information.
Sure. If anybody has any questions or suggestions, ideas, or just wants to give their thoughts, they can go to my. I have a website they can go to, which is nealverma.com. So NEAL, V as in Victor, ERM like Mary A. So nealverma.com, and they can click on the contact link, and that will send an email directly to me. So that's actually the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, we talked about the oil, we talked about the financial institutions and all these things. So how are these oil companies holding up, and how long can they hold?
So the fracking guys that I've talked to, like I said, they're saying that they only have literally 6 to 8 months of cash left in the bank.
That's far less than what the Middle East has.
So they're going to only last 6 to 8 months. So I think Saudi Arabia is going to outlast them.
I know,
And so unfortunately, what's going to happen is a lot of these guys will unfortunately go under. So what's going to happen then is a lot of the loans that they took out with the small banks here in Houston and Texas, they're going to default on their loans. And so that's going to cause some problems in the market as well.
That's right.
And I think people are not really thinking through the extent of how much damage the number of defaults that are going to occur going forward is going to be.
Local to Texas, or is it going to be nationwide?
I think it's definitely a large portion in Texas and to some degree nationwide. I'm not sure to the full extent. And I think maybe somebody in the banking industry might be able to give a better or more in-depth perspective. But from what I understand, I mean, it's definitely. I think some of the bigger banks have reduce their liability.
It's just like those toxic mortgage loans they had. I mean, it's basically identical to that.
Basically, but not to. It's not such. Not because I think they all became a little bit smarter, especially the national banks. And so they reduced their loans to kind of their liabilities to oil to these fracking companies to a much smaller extent. And so instead of being leveraged instead of being having like around, let's say 10% of their balance sheet given to these guys, it might be only like a couple of percent. So they're not going to be at least the national banks are not going to be hit as hard, from what I understand.
Okay, now we have covered the oil effect on the. Okay, let's talk about all these empty office buildings, apartment complexes. Is this a right time to just jump in and buy some of these properties if you have money available?
No, not yet. So we're still so I guess depending on how you look at it, we are still at the beginning stages.
So we don't know how.
And so we don't know how long. My prediction is that maybe in 3-4 years it'll be a fantastic time to buy.
So in other words, we don't know how long this plateau in the price is going to hang around. Okay, that's the biggest dilemma.
We don't know, but if you look at like general business cycles,
I know,
they're about 7 to 10 years. And the last cycle, like we peaked in 2007. And then the best time to buy after that was really about like 2010. So about 3 years, 4 years after 2010. 2011, those were great times to buy, where the prices for apartments were like literally half the price of what they were in 2007. So if you use those kind of calculations and you kind of see what's happening now, again, I'm predicting that it's 2015. Let's say in 2019, I think it's going to be a great time to buy.
Okay, what about even if you were to just go and manage these empty complexes? Can you find tenants?
So that's the thing. It's going to be harder to find tenants because they had predicted good times for Houston and that there's going to be so much inflow and people moving in. But the fact of the matter is there's not that many people in Houston right now. That can, in the overall population, there's 2 million people in the Houston metro area. There's 2 million people outside of that, so it's about 4 million people. I think there's actually more than that because there's a lot of people that they don't account for.
That's right.
And so if you account for like everybody in all the suburbs and everything like that, it's really Houston is like probably 5 million or something like that. And
it's almost edging to be the third largest.
Well, I think it is already the third
largest.
Largest
because
in the country. Chicago is. They're saying that Houston will officially take over. In the paper, they had said that Houston's officially going to take over Chicago as the third largest in 2019 or 2020. But I think they already are the largest because if you include all the suburbs, Houston's already larger than Chicago.
Right.
Chicago is also a very confined city. It's a very geographically confined city. It's not spread out like Houston.
Continue to spread.
And Houston continues to spread. So Houston could eventually become even the second largest or the first largest because it's geographically it's bigger than New York or Chicago. Or Los Angeles. So.
Let's give out your contact information again, and then we'll switch gears and talk about interest rates and real estate.
Sure. So anybody who wants to contact me or learn more, they can go to nealverma.com. nealverma.com.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching a Triple N talk show. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM, and we would like you to download our app, which is NNN Media for Android or Apple devices, so you can watch all our interviews on YouTube and also Google Plus. While we are talking about YouTube, we would like you to visit our YouTube channel, which is NIK NIKAM, where we have more than 750 videos accenting our experience here in the Houston area. And we also have a Facebook page, which is NIK NIKAM Network, where we keep you abreast of the latest buzz in the Houston area and also from around the world. So please join, like our Facebook page. And today we are talking about real estate, apartment and commercial real estate market status update here in the Houston area. And my special guest is Neal Verma, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Nova Asset Management, and they manage apartments and office complexes. Okay, let's talk about, after what, 7-8 years or so of interest rates being practically zero. Now, finally, they raised interest rates by 0.25%, and I think the market was more relieved with this the demon of when they're going to increase the rate or what they're going to do and all these things. And of course, it went up a little bit and it dropped again today. How does the interest rate affect the real estate market in the Houston area when it's already in the dumps?
Okay, so that's a good question. So, so one thing is, so interest rates. So you're right. Yeah, it was pretty historic what they did just on Wednesday. Was the first time in 7 years they've raised the interest rate, which was a quarter point. And so when they raise the rate, they're raising the Federal Reserve rate by a quarter point, the federal funds rate. It affects the mortgages, but it's not like your mortgage is going to go up a quarter point.
I see.
So what happens is because your mortgages are actually more affected by the rate of the mortgage.
I see.
And the rates of the mortgage are actually more or less determined by the mortgage securities.
I see. Yeah.
Now, who determines that? So let me get into that. So it's a little bit interesting and somewhat confusing. But what happens is mortgage-backed securities are basically bought by either private institutions and or the government. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So what happened is, if you remember the Federal Reserve, they started to kind of prop up the economy, they became the main buyer of mortgage-backed securities.
I see, yeah.
And so what they were doing for the last 7 years is buying all the securities through Freddie Mac and Sallie Mae and so forth. And so they were buying all the securities, and so they were the main buyer.
I see, yeah.
And so they were kind of determining the price.
Yeah.
And so when the government basically was the main buyer.
Yeah.
By in a way the main buyer, and so they were the ones determining the price.
Yeah.
So they haven't allowed a lot of other people to come in and buy those.
Yeah.
And so that's one reason, because they haven't kind of opened it up to the market again. It's one of the reasons the rates haven't gone up.
Okay.
Over time, they'll start opening it up a little bit, and it'll start. The rates will start creeping up. Now the rates will creep up a little bit from this raise, but it's going to creep up very little bit, like to the end consumer buying a house.
Yeah.
It's going to make a very small difference. It might rate, instead of like a quarter point, might go up like 15 points, 0.15%.
Yeah.
Something like that, or 0.10%.
Yeah.
10 points. That's maybe what they're going to see. Now, even if it was a quarter point, by the way, even if it did affect, which is not, but even if it did affect the mortgage rates by a quarter point, it's still not that much. You're still talking about, for most people, for the average home in the United States, like 150, 250,000, you're talking about like a Starbucks cup of coffee in the end of the month. Really, that's what you're talking about with a quarter point. So it's not going to cause a lot of damage right now.
I see. Yeah.
But what the Federal Reserve is probably going to do is they're going to raise a quarter point or so every quarter.
Yeah.
And so after a couple of years, then it'll start making a dent.
I see.
And it'll make a dent sooner probably in commercial properties and office buildings and apartments and retail and warehouses before it even hits consumers to a large degree. Because when you're talking about 1%, that can make or break an apartment deal.
I see, yeah.
Or it can make or break an office building deal, especially when you have like these high rises that you see in.
Because you have all fixed expenses, right? You can't do anything about that.
Well, no, yeah, they're I mean, their mortgages, they might be on a variable rate.
Yeah.
And then they have like a $100 million office building on I-10. 1% is going to make a huge difference. I mean, that's literally, it could break them. They could
given that point,
if
you got $100 million mortgage,
right?
Doesn't it make sense for them to lock in the rate, because you know the interest rates are going to go up?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of so that goes into real estate finance. So do you want to lock in a rate? Usually, when you build an office building, you're not going to you're probably not going to do that. You're not going to keep it for a long time. You probably want to fill it up and maybe sell it.
Yeah.
If you're going to lock it in, the banks or institutions that give you that loan are going to handcuff you, and they may not let you out of that loan for like 7-10 years.
Oh, I see.
And so you're going to be stuck there for a long time. You may also have like a personal guarantee.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
And when you lock in a rate, and so they may not want to lock in that rate because they don't want to be personally liable for that office building. And so there's a lot of things that go into real estate finance. So a lot of these guys are not going to lock it in. A lot of them are going to be having
variable rates.
They're going to have a very short-term loan, maybe 3 years. Interest only, because they want to keep it as low as possible so they can make their numbers. They're not going to be. So they're not going to be looking at in terms of a consumer. See, most consumers are going to say, okay, I want to go with a 30-year fixed mortgage. I have a set rate, and I'm going to pay off the house, and I'll be building equity in the house and all these kinds of things.
So that's different from
It's very
homeowners.
different. So homeowners totally different from commercial and apartment real estate. It's two total different animals.
That's interesting.
In commercial real estate and multifamily, you totally want to go in a different direction. You're going to be thinking more of like, how can I keep the rate as low as possible so that the income I generate is enough to pay off the mortgage every month. You don't want to have your mortgage too high where the cushion is so small, something happens in the economy and you're out. So you don't want that to happen. So you're going to be thinking about a lot of other things. So you're not going to be locking yourself in.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching a Triple N talk show. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM, and my special guest is Neal Verma. We are talking about apartment and commercial real estate here in Houston. present status. Oh, okay. Let's talk about you have used your information technology knowledge and implemented some very, very innovative ideas in terms of managing apartment and office complexes and minimizing financial losses. So let's talk about that. Maybe you can enlighten us, and that may be of benefit to a lot of other property owners,
sure,
commercial
sure.
property owners.
So one big problem we had was a lot of theft.
Yeah.
Both to some degree by employees and also from outside criminals who were stealing money orders.
Yeah.
So before we used to accept money orders and cash. Then we started going away from cash because obviously there's problems with crime when you're taking large amounts of cash. When you start accepting money orders, what would happen is, especially with C-class properties, which are primarily Hispanic demographic, you have a lot of Hispanics that may not be able to write good English. And so they are not able to literally write the name of the apartment complex.
Oh.
And
so they would leave it blank.
So then they would just leave it blank because they don't want to write the wrong
information. That's like an open check to whoever wants to, whoever picks up the first.
And so, like, if you think the average rent is, let's say, $600, so they're getting a lot of money orders every day for $600. And so if you're an employee and let's say you're like you've missed your car payment or you need some extra cash,
just let me take it and go.
This is an easy cash, so you can. It's very. There's a large temptation to well, you know what? Who's going to miss $600 out of all the rents? If you have 300 units paying $600 each, for example, who's going to miss one of them, right? And so there's a large temptation there. And so people were, in fact, employees were stealing them and putting their name on it, and then depositing it into their account. And I would find this, by the way, because on the money orders, there's serial numbers on the bottom. And Western Union, all the other money order companies have this. And so if the tenant has a receipt with that same tracking number, you can give that to Western Union, and they'll track it in the money system to see where it ended up. And so we would find it ended up in an employee's bank account. So this is how we knew, by the way. So so you have theft by employees. And then you also have outside criminals.
Vandalism.
Coming in, vandalism. So you have people breaking into the leasing office and finding money orders in the drawers and pocketing those because they're blank.
They know where the money is.
They know, and they've seen it before, and they know that these properties have blank money orders. And then a lot of the times also, like if you have a lot of, for example, burglar bars and secrets and everything like that, and they can't get in, then at all the properties we have night drop boxes.
I know.
Where tenants can drop the money in. And so they would steal the night drop box entirely. Then we put the night drop box on the inside of the door. And then they would come up with innovative ways of stealing the money orders. Like many times we saw them using fishing line with like a piece of gum, and they would thread it through the drop box. And then whatever it would stick to, they would pull it out. And remember, these guys have nothing to do all night long. So if they have like 10 hours at night and it's dark, nobody can see them at night. They have a lot of time to sit there and fish for dollars.
Even if they get 2-3 money orders, that's a
lot.
Pretty good.
That's like $1,800. That's fantastic. And so sitting there all night, exactly. Even one money order, $600.
That's right.
So that's what they would do. And so I had come up with different ideas to combat the problem. And one was I was thinking for a long time to create a ATM that would allow tenants to take a blank money order, put it into an ATM machine that I would somehow build. And then the tenants would type in their unit number. And then it would like print a receipt that, okay, we received your money order and here's your receipt and this is the unit number. And hopefully the machine would read the amount of the money order and record that as well for us. And then I would have like an armored truck come and pick up the money order so they could deposit in the banks. And so I had that idea. I had some other ideas as well. So I had all these kind of ideas. How do we stop this problem? Because it's a big problem. So then I was talking to RealPage, which is one of the companies that we use. Well, the main company that we use for rent roll software. And so RealPage is a public company out of Dallas.
I see.
And we've been using them for a long time now. For rent roll software. And rent roll software is the software that we use to take all the the checks and money orders and everything like that, input it into the system.
I see.
So that on the tenant's ledger, you can record that, okay, this particular tenant has paid $600.
Yeah.
And then you can print a receipt as well.
I see.
And then give it to the tenant, and then we know that the tenant has paid this much, or we can look up the balance.
I see. Yeah.
It's an accounting system.
Yeah.
For apartments.
I see.
Only for apartments. A whole accounting system, if you can imagine, like something like a QuickBooks.
Yeah.
But made just for the apartment.
I see. Yeah.
And it's very extensive. So we used the software. So I talked to their people, and so we had many discussions. I told them about my ATM machine idea and this idea, that idea, and they were like, "Well, we're thinking about this idea. We've been working on this. What do you think about it?" So they explained to me this system that they were thinking about, which they called e-money.
Yeah.
So the e-money, how it would work is that the tenants, instead of getting a money order, because they were already going to a grocery store.
That's right. Yeah.
Or they'll go to a check cashing place or a gas station.
Gas station. Yes.
And they will give them a cash.
Yeah.
They will get a blank money order made with that amount, and then they'll bring it back to the leasing office.
I see. Yeah.
So their idea was, why don't we do what a lot of the utility companies do?
Yeah.
Which is that the utility companies have given access to their computers to these gas stations and grocery stores. So any person can go to, for example, a grocery store and pay their Reliant bill, their electricity bill.
Yes.
So why don't we use that same concept, but for apartments? And so it's a very grandiose concept because there's a lot of moving parts involved. And so we talked about it.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, let's put this idea together. And they were very interested in putting it together and putting all the pieces together to make it work. And they said, would you guys be interested in trying it out and being the guinea pig? Yeah. And I said, of course, because this is a big problem that I've had. Yeah. And I want to fix this problem. So let's try it out. Yeah. And so they had to set up all the pieces. They had to be able to figure out how to have the rent rolls accounting software. Yeah. That information tie into the grocery stores, so that any grocery store, if you can imagine like a Walmart or an H-E-B, anybody can go there and say, okay, I live in this apartment, like I live in 7979 Westheimer, and I live in apartment 407, and can you tell me what my balance is? Then the teller should be able to tell them, okay, sir, your balance is $900. Yeah. And you owe like $50 for water, and you owe $10 for trash. Yeah. And so your total is this amount. And then the tenant can pay them the cash. They will collect the cash, and then they will input that information to the ledger. And then this was a concept, and by the way, now it works finally. Now it works. And so we've been going through this process for 2 years, and we've implemented all the properties, but now it actually works. So what happens is the tenant does give them the cash to the teller. Yeah. The teller puts it into their system, then puts it into the ledger. So then two things happen. One thing is that eventually that money will make its way to RealPage. Yeah. And then RealPage will wire the money into the Nova account. Like a
clearinghouse.
Yeah. RealPage will act basically like a clearinghouse. They'll collect the funds and then deposit them. They will also take the tenants information that they have paid and what they've paid and everything like that. That information will go, for example, from H-E-B into the RealPage servers, I see, and then into our ledgers. So that we know that that tenant who lived in 407 has paid his rent. Yeah. And so we know. So that was a great idea, and so it took a while to implement, but now it works, and it works fantastic. So what's happened now is we've reduced our crime to like literally zero.
That's fascinating.
And so a lot of that theft and everything that was happening, that's all eliminated. Yeah. Plus, all of our bookkeepers. So before we have, and we still do, we have bookkeepers at each property.
That's right, yeah.
The bookkeeper is the one who collects the rent, and then puts it into the ledger, and then would go deposit into the bank. That was happening. That's what was happening for a long time.
Even it's a risky job nowadays.
Right.
Having a lot of money in
exactly.
your pocket.
Yeah, it's very risky, very risky. And so that was what was happening for a long, long time. And so now we've eliminated that task. Yeah. That task, by the way, was taking up like 80% of their time. Yeah. So now they don't have to do that anymore. They don't have to collect, checks from tenants. Yeah. Then they would sit there and go through the ledgers and enter everything in. And okay, they've paid the trash, they paid the pest control, they paid the rent, they paid the water. All these things would take a lot of time. Yeah. And go to the bank, and then to reconcile everything, it would take a long time. If you can imagine. So now all that time has been freed up. So now they can do other things at the property instead of doing
just spending a whole month collecting checks.
Just collecting checks and knocking on people's doors and stuff like that. All that time has been saved. So now they can do more interesting things, like see if units are being made, like getting ready for new tenants. We call it make ready.
Oh, make
so
ready.
Are the units getting ready for the new tenants to move in? So that make ready term, that they can see those things. They can check for water leaks at the property. They can call
maintain the property.
We have them now calling different vendors to fix the property and fix the exterior of the property and look for things that are needing to get replaced, like lights and outdoor fixtures and pickets on the fences. And there's so many things. So we always have a lot of work to do.
So have you already seen an improvement in the bottom line from this process?
Yeah, so there's definitely a huge improvement.
Yeah.
Because all that money is being saved.
Yes.
And then we are also improving our efficiency, and we're able to do a lot more things, which can increase our top line as well.
So you had Real Page here, and we have H-E-B, Walmart, Kroger, and all these things here.
Right.
And was there some link that you all established in terms of IT?
So what happens is we are able to pull up all of the Real Page, all of our ledgers through a browser.
I see.
And the browsers, so everything is web-based now.
Yeah.
And so we are actually logging into the Real Page servers once we go to their website. And so the main thing was actually not the heavy lifting actually wasn't done by us. It was actually done by Real Page.
I see.
Because they had to figure out how to get the information and the money from the grocery stores to them.
Give them the information.
So how to get the money and the data, how to get to their servers. Because we're just logging into their servers.
I see. Yeah.
So the main onus was on them to figure out all the links and get everything figured out and done. But now they've gotten it done. And they've done a great job. I mean, they have now
maybe they can franchise
Walmart,
it to all the other
Kroger,
apartment owners.
Well, they're doing it, yeah. So they have rolled it out to a lot of other property management companies now. Yeah, they have a lot because it's a large public company. They have a lot of clients, just like us, a lot of clients, and so they've been rolling the same e-money system out to the other clients as well. Yeah,
that's fascinating. So whenever you rent an apartment, even if it's one, it's a challenge collecting rent.
Right,
Imagine collecting rents on hundreds and hundreds of properties. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Triple N Talk Show, and my special guest is Neal Verma. We are talking about apartment and commercial real estate here in Houston and how to optimize your especially collection of dineros, money. Okay, let's talk about you've been featured 3-4 times in the Houston Chronicle in the last couple of weeks. Okay,
right, yes,
let's talk about that.
Okay, yeah. So I think it's just 1 week I got like 4 articles, which was pretty nice. Definitely very nice.
What different topics did they cover?
So I had the Houston Chronicle cover me twice, and the Houston Business Journal cover me twice. And in both cases, they both were very interested in the e-money system, which I just described.
Yeah.
And then both of them wanted my take on the oil and gas industry and how it's affecting the Houston real estate market. And so I talked with both of them about both those things.
Yeah, this is excellent because, as I said, I had done a talk on oil prices and and its effect and all these things, and how long is this going to last, this drought?
Right.
And now tying it up with the real estate, So, ladies and gentlemen, we advise you to watch both of these videos. This one particular commercial property status here in Houston, and also we have one on boom and bust in oil prices and supplies. Is it man-made or real? Our special guest at that time was Fani Gaddy. So these two put together will give you a complete overview of where Houston stands and what we can expect as far as real estate and also oil weather is going to be for the next, we don't know, maybe 3 to 5 years.
Right, yeah, it could be that long. Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Neal?
No, I think most of the, I think that we've covered most of the bases.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with oil and gas going forward and how long Saudi Arabia can hold out. I understand now that they're having for the first time a budget deficit in their kingdom, and so they have actually started selling bonds to raise cash.
I know. Yeah, I saw that today, like 100 billion.
Right. Yeah.
Worth of bonds.
Right.
They had
Exactly.
to sell.
Exactly.
So that I was just reading this morning.
And so
Saudi Arabian story.
So the question is, how long do they want to do things like that before they feel the pain, and how long they can stomach this kind of situation for themselves? And so I think they want to squeeze out all these companies as much as they can.
Yeah.
I think they'll definitely hold out for maybe another year or two, is my guess. I think maybe after 2 years, after 1 year, I think a lot of the companies, fracking companies, unfortunately will fall. Which is very unfortunate.
Like, in fact, Gary mentioned more than 70% of the fracking has
already slowed down or stopped.
In Houston area.
Exactly. So if 70% is already gone and 30% is only left,
I know.
So I think in a year, I think most of them are going to be gone, and I think that was the Saudi Arabia's main aim.
And the sad thing is to revamp them. It takes several months, and it's a huge operational cost.
Oh my God. So I think so it'll be interesting. So I think Saudi Arabia might continue this for another year or two, is my prediction.
Yeah.
And then probably the oil price will get back to where it is right now.
It's fascinating. We talked about oil, stock market, real estate, interest, apartment prices, management optimization, and all these things. We didn't even touch on the turmoil that is going on in the Middle East and how it's going to interact with all these things we have talked about so far. But I guess we just have to, wait for that thing to happen and then see what happens. Once again, you can give out your contact information if somebody is interested in knowing more about these topics.
Anybody wants to learn more about commercial real estate or apartment business, they can definitely send me a note. By going to nealverma.com. That's NEALVERMA, nealverma.com, and then they can click on the Contact Us link and send me a note that way.
Neal, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's delighted, and you are so knowledgeable. Maybe we need to get back 6 months or a year from now and see how much of what we discussed today bears relevance to
it'll be very interesting,
what it's going to be, so we can have an update for ourselves and for our viewers.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.